Hello, everybody. My name is Bill, and we set up this channel a few years ago to do some specific movies, and I wanted to bring it back and take a look at another favorite camera of mine outside of using the beta ones. This one is the Bell & Howell 240 60mm movie camera. This is a very easy to use home movie camera from the mid to late 1950s, and it's an excellent beginner camera for those looking to shoot 60mm for the first time. Many of these models, they still work today. They were built very, very well, and they can be found online for anywhere from $20 to $100. I think that I bought mine with the case probably for like $40, and that was a few years ago. And hopefully you can get the case too, because that's a nice thing to have. If they're in the case, they're generally in better condition. Anyway, so this one is mine right here, and like I said, this was one that I bought secondhand, so it wasn't an original family heirloom. But this is a really cool piece of kit. And I really get a kick out of just taking this one out and using it. So there were about 4 different models of this camera. The first one was the 240A, which was a basic version with a fixed lens that ran for about $179 US, which adjusted today is $1,899. There was the 240T, which was a C-mount twin lens turret model, which ran for about $219. Today, that would be $2,323. There was the 240TA, which was the big back daddy, which had 3 turret mount lenses. I don't have a price on that one, but I'm sure it was a lot more. And then this one, which was the 240EE, which stood for electric eye. That ran for $329, which today would be about $3,490. So they were very, very expensive. And the EE stands, again, for the electric eye, which was supposed to be a kind of auto exposure system that you would use, and we'll get into that part a little bit later. But it's interesting because when you look at this thing, I mean, it looks like it, the styling cues, they're very, very mid-century. It looks like it came right out of Don Draper's office or something. One thing to note about these cameras is that they are very heavy. I haven't weighed this one, but I would say, I've definitely lugged it a lot. I'd say this is probably maybe about like 5 or 6 pounds or so. It's a big boy. But these guys, these were built to last. And the fact that it's still working today is definitely a testament to that. But again, it's full metal. I've dropped this one a few times, and it's been fine. A couple features on it. So it's got a variable speed. If I look here, there's actually a meter right there. And that lets you adjust it for different sorts of film speeds. So I could do 8 if I was working in a very, I'm trying to get used to this here. And it'll go all the way up to 64 on that side. But standard silent was 16 frames per second. So most of the movies that I've shot, they've been about 16 frames per second. 64, that's like super slow-mo. You're using up a lot of film. When you're actually shooting that fast, it sounds like a hairdryer, to be honest with you. But you don't want to really run these a whole lot without any film in it, because they're designed to have that in there. So if you are going to run it like a hairdryer, please put film in it. But it can be very, very loud. Again, these were silent cameras, so they weren't designed for quiet. They weren't designed for you to be able to record something in the background. The other thing that it has is a footage and wind counter. So bringing it up again, if you look on this side, you'll see here that it'll tell you how much film is remaining, and then it'll have it'll tell you how wound it is, basically how much energy you have in it. There's no batteries in this camera. These are completely driven by this guy right here. So there is a spring wound motor. I hit the trigger on the side right over here, and then it goes. You can hear it right there. Nope. That's about how loud it is running at normal operation. It's also got, so this will fit 100 loads, 100-foot film loads on daylight spools. It also has a feature called auto threading, which is where the film will actually, if I open it, so you use these little thumb things right here, and then the top just comes right off. Once you do it right. There we go. Okay, so this is the inside of it. So by auto threading, what I mean is that if I put a new film reel here, I can put the film through here and it'll automatically come back down to the other side. With a lot of the older cameras, you kind of had to set that up first manually and make sure everything was done right. This one does it for you, which is a very, very nice feature. So obviously it was, this was going to be geared for people who maybe this was their first time using one of these bad boys or wanted a much easier experience. But you kind of have to see it in action to appreciate it. But it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Let's see. There is a spot for a cable release down here. So if you wanted to do single frames in a busy place and then you wanted to run it at full speed, you could do that. Let's see. Single frame and lock positions. Okay, good point. So on the side here with the trigger, right there I did a single frame. So you could do that, or you could put it in a lockdown position like this, and then it would just run until the entire wound was finished. And I think that you can get about maybe like 30 seconds on a full wind. Running at a about 30 seconds on a full wind, running at a lower film speed. Couple other cool points. So this one has a 20 millimeter fixed Comat lens, which I guess is a wide enough lens. I'm not an expert on lenses, but it's a fixed lens. The other ones that you'd have would have C mounts, and you could change those out. This one goes all the way down to 1.9 aperture, which for a lens, that's, you can get a lot of light into this guy if you need to. I've actually shot with it in very dark situations and actually got some decent images out of it. And it will go as close as 18 inches. So that's pretty close. So you can get some nice close-ups and do some interesting stuff in the dark with it. Let's see. Oh, and the electric eye. So I have the electric eye on mine, like I mentioned earlier. So this was supposed to auto-expose the film based on whatever setting that you had for it. So on the front here, let's see, can we get that to focus? No, not quite. Okay, so it's a little bit too shiny. But I can tell you that on here, there's a couple different markings for whatever the film speed would be, or the emulsion speed rather, and then whatever the camera speed would be. And then based on that setting, there was some electronics inside that would pretty much change the aperture based on that for the camera. There's a spot on this one for a couple batteries. These are some weird batteries to have to put in here. I've got one of them here. So there we go. XLA133. So I've put two of these batteries in here and tried it out, and actually I had a second one of these that I tried it out as well on, and I couldn't get them to work. So I don't know if it's the electronics are the problem or if the voltage is just slightly off and it won't accept them. So whatever the case is, it's not really a deal breaker. It just looks kind of weird. But otherwise it's a really good camera. So how does it shoot? That's the ultimate question. Well, I've actually had great success with this particular camera. So I've always used an external light meter, generally on my phone, and set the aperture manually based on that, the shutter speed. I've shot about 15 to 20 reels of film, including everything from Kodak Vision color negative to Plus X and Tri-X, new stock, older stock. Here's a couple I've actually done. 7 to 40 Eastman Ektachrome stock. I've actually had some pretty good results with that one. Tri-X 7278, and of course Plus X 7276. This one, it actually does really well with these. Nice inky black, creates some really, really cool images with it. And here's a more up-to-date version of Tri-X, and I've got some Kodak Vision and stuff in the fridge. But generally speaking, I would say low-speed films are going to work out on this very, very well. And I have been able to do some high-speed stuff. Obviously, you can get occasional light leaks from the side here. So if you are really serious about that, you could possibly put gaffer's tape on there just to be able to prevent any kind of light leaks. Here's a couple clips of stuff I've taken. This one was done in Egypt. This was about... this footage I took was in Egypt back in 2022. And a couple other places in the Middle East. This was shot with Kodak EXR, I think it was 100T tungsten. So there's a little bit of fogging in the film. It's running at a slightly higher frame rate here at, I think, about 24 frames a second, even though it was shot at 16. But some pretty cool images out of it. Here's another one I shot at 500 ISO. So this was at a giant party in the middle of the woods. This was shot with 500 speed Fuji film. I forget what the emulsion was, but it was definitely color negative film. And that one actually came out really, really well. Which is interesting because some of the other stuff I shot with it did not come out as well. But that one was a lot of fun. So, let's go into some pros and cons. Some pros. These cameras are insanely reliable, even 60 years after they were made. On the 240, the auto load feature makes putting new film in very, very easy. So as a beginner, this is a absolute must. It's got no batteries outside of the couple that I showed you, so you don't have to worry about any kind of thing running out on these. You just wind them, they're ready to go. You can actually also get an excellent case for them. So I've actually got the case for this one right here that it came in. And this is, if you can find these are a lot of fun. They're not great for taking on long strides, but if you're just going across the country somewhere and you want to take it with you, this is an excellent get if you can. And it's kind of cool to put stickers on it from places that you've taken it. So be on the lookout for these as well. Another thing is that it has an exceptional value. For a 60mm camera, you can spend, $200, $300, $400 for a Krasnogorsk, especially one that's been refurbished and set to the Super 16 sort of frame. But if you're really just looking for something a little bit quick and dirty, just to get your feet wet and see if you like 16mm or just to start out in, this is an exceptional value. Especially if you can get one for under $50. It's a great camera. Another thing I didn't really touch on before, this also takes single perforated 60mm film. Now when I say single perforated, most newer stock that you have out there is going to be single perf. Let me see if I can bring up an example for you. So with this one that I'm holding, this is this Tri-X is a single perf version. So what that means is that there's only holes on one side of the film. They used to be with the older stock that you'd have holes on both sides. The idea about only having one was that you could put an audio track on one side, or you could expand the film to go all the way out so you could shoot something like Super 16. This one here, perforated one edge. And this one here also perforated one edge. So we'll just open this one out because we can. Okay. Oh yeah, got that vinegar smell. So right there's only holes on one side of the film. Can you see that? Holding it in front of my shirt makes it look a little bit easier. But yeah, they're only on one side. So, some of the older 16mm film cameras that you'll find out there, especially ones from the 1930s and such, they will only take single perf film. Therefore, some of the older ones from the 1930s will only take double perf film. So unless you have a bunch of that lying around, it can be difficult to get that to work in those cameras. So with this one, you don't have to worry about that. You can use old stock, you can use newer stock, and single perf, double perf, it doesn't matter. It'll do just about everything. Cons. Well, one thing I can tell you about the Bell Howell 240 is that it's not very user serviceable. I had two of mine, or the two that I have. I had two of mine where I had to free a gear on them. Thankfully, it was a pretty easy fix. I took apart one of the main plates that was on the inside and had access to it. But that's something to keep in mind. Another thing that's really interesting about these is that they're missing the oil lubrication points that the 70 series before had. I don't know why they took those off. I think that would be an excellent thing to have on these, but for some reason, it's just not really on there. If you wanted to get it serviced, you'd have to take it back to the camera dealer. Another negative point about this one, and this is for probably 16mm cameras as a whole, is that they're very luggable. Like I mentioned before, this is a heavy boy, so just be prepared if you're planning to take this on a long trip. These do weigh you down a little bit. Another negative point, again, the electric eye on yours, it might be unusable. The batteries also to test these are pretty pricey. They run at about, I think it was $20 to get two of these bad boys. Another negative point on this camera, you might have issues if you're going into foreign countries. So when we were in Egypt, I was told that if I wanted to use, okay, first off, they'd never seen anything like this. Okay, anyone who was living in Egypt that ever used one of these things probably isn't around anymore. Same thing in our country. But anyway, so when I would get asked by some of the government officials at some of these historical sites about this, every single time they demanded that if I was to use this there, I would have to pay for a $250 permit. I kid you not. That happened every time when we were over there, and multiple times I got asked if this was a drone, which is kind of funny to me because it doesn't really look like a drone, but I guess if you think it's an alien spaceship flying around like this, then maybe it could be a drone. So keep that in mind if you're planning on taking some foreign travel with this one. Conclusion, I would recommend this camera for anyone who is just trying out 16mm. It does have some limitations, so be aware of those, but the build quality and the reliability, that's going to go a long way. And if you happen to have one of these as an heirloom, congratulations, because you have inherited something which is very, very special. By the way, this is how you operate it. So you would look through here, and you have this little tiny view hole right there, and that's how you operate it. Not like this, not like this. You do it like that. Anyway, that's the review of the 240. Hope you liked it. Hope you find one of these guys out there, and hope this was useful for someone.